Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Manchester City are about to, or probably have, depending when you watch this video, announce a new signing. They've got themselves a new forward, the Egyptian superstar Omar Marmoush, who's having a wonderful season, or has had a wonderful season over in Bundesliga. And I needed to know a little bit more about this man that's cost an awful lot of money, who's going to come in and play alongside the likes of Haaland, De Bruyne, Foden, and so on. So I got in touch with Stefan Bienkowski, sorry mate, I've butchered it already, who's a wonderful sports journalist and football writer. He covers the Bundesliga and the Premier League, and also he's got his own YouTube channel, by the way, on the go now because social media's a mess and he wants to escape it. It'll be a link in the description. Stefan, thank you so much for coming on, mate. How are you doing? Are you good?
It's an absolute pleasure. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure, mate. I'm looking forward to talking about this man because, look, if you follow football, it's very hard not to know, to any degree, not to know who Omar Marmoush is. It's very fair to say he's had his breakout season this year, but he was a name that most people would be familiar with, and even over the past few months, it's been hard to ignore his story because he's been, rising through the ranks in terms of prominence and all that kind of stuff, and he's had a remarkable season. I want to know a few things today. I want to talk about, his general form, your reaction to the news, his strengths, his weaknesses, his position, where will Pep use him, and in your opinion, how far he can go. So it'd be good to just immediately get your reaction to the news that he was signing for Manchester City Football Club.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't come as a huge surprise. I think most people covering German football assumed that one of the big English clubs would come around eventually and test, Eintracht Frankfurt's resolve for him. This is what typically happens at just about every German club, but Frankfurt in particular, they've put together a really interesting business model of kind of developing these forwards and then selling them on. Cole Muani is the most obvious one who went to
Yeah.
PSG a couple of seasons ago. And yeah, I think he's well suited to the Premier League. He's got all the kind of attributes you would want. He's fast, he's quick with the ball at his feet, a great dribbler with the ball, can play 1-2s, great finisher. He's even scored some remarkable free kicks. So, I mean, he hasn't really put a foot wrong this season, to be honest with you, which can be a good thing and a bad thing because you're kind of waiting for that kind of downtick in form. He did kind of, I suppose, did have that towards the last kind of 5 or 10 games of 2024, but as I'm sure Manchester City fans saw over the last kind of couple of weeks, he kind of bounced back into it in the last 2 or 3 games he played for Frankfurt. So,
Yeah.
yeah, he looks like a great player for Frankfurt, and I think he'll do really well in the Premier League.
So what about his general story overall? Because it's not like he's been a superstar, or he's obviously been playing at a very high level. But he's 25 years old now. He turns 26 in a couple of weeks, and I wouldn't say nomadic's the right word, but it's not been like a direct line to the top from a very young age. Of course, he started out with the Egyptian Premier League, went to Wolfsburg too. They played for their second side. Then, of course, in the Bundesliga, where he didn't really play much football for a while.
Mm.
Alone at St. Pauli seemed to do well for him, then Stuttgart before Frankfurt. What's his story been like? Has he been sort of? Has there been any narrative around him prior to this season? What's it been like for him in the Bundesliga so far?
Yeah, so he is a definitely interesting player. I think late bloomer is probably the best word to use to describe him. Um, I think for the most part, he's a player whose attributes kind of had him shoehorned as a certain type of player, which I think was probably misconstrued. And again, this is where the Mohamed Salah comparisons already begin because, as Premier League fans will know, Mohamed Salah spent a lot of time at a lot of clubs before
Yeah,
he kind of blossomed into the player he was at Liverpool. And I think, like Salah, people looked at him and think, right, he's fast, he can dribble, he's going to make a great winger. And that's kind of what St. Pauli tried to do, is what Wolfsburg tried to do when they had him as a young player.
yeah,
He went on loan at Stuttgart as well and did the same thing. It's only when he really got to Frankfurt and they thought, well, hold on a minute, this guy's actually a really good finisher. He's really good around the box. He's even better when he's in the box and he's got that time to kind of hit a shot away. Why don't we try playing him as an actual forward rather than this guy who's 30 or 40 yards out to the left or the
yeah.
right, running the byline? And that's where that's just kind of where they got that light in the bottle moment. And that's when he became the player he is now. They started playing him centrally as a kind of second striker, almost as a kind of centre forward as well, if they want. And the goals and assists just started coming thick and fast. And that's maybe a simplification of what's happened, but that's really the gist of it, to be honest with you. These clubs thought he was a young winger. He went to Frankfurt, played as a central forward, played as a kind of second striker, he's really has gone from strength to strength because he likes to drift. I mean, again, like Salah, and I know it sounds like a really lazy comparison, but you would say
Yeah,
Salah's technically Liverpool's talisman. He's technically their goal scorer, but he likes to drift. He likes to find a space. He likes to be comfortable. He likes to do things at his own speed. He likes to do things
100%.
at his own way. And I guess Marmoush is much like that. Really, you wouldn't really pin him down as a kind of penalty box striker. Or as a second striker, maybe, but he likes to drift. He loves to play off other players as well. He's done really well playing off 𝙏𝙬𝙚𝙧 this season as his kind of interesting strike partnership. And yeah, that's really the gist of it. I mean, obviously he's developed. He's matured as a young player as well. I think he'll had to learn a lot of things at St. Pauli and Stuttgart and Wolfsburg, and realize that he had to get his head down and really hammer down a position for himself, or else his career wasn't going to go anywhere. And I think that's all kind of came to fruition at Frankfurt, which, as I said, are a club who have a really good history, or modern history, of developing strikers into superstars. And Marmoush has been the most recent one.
Yeah, absolutely, and it really is an insane season that he's having. I mean, I'm looking at his stats now for this season, and obviously, they don't tell the full picture, but they tell a pretty beautiful one. In 17 Bundesliga games, 15 goals and 9 assists. That's truly remarkable. Like, it's a phenomenal, and he carries on in other competitions as well. He's scored loads and assisted in other competitions, so he's having a ridiculous, campaign, and of course, it's led to a big money move to Manchester City. Do you feel like it's sort of sustainable, that level? Is it one of those things where some players, when they find who they are, when they're hot and they just sort of stay there, because they explode? Does it feel to you personally like he's sort of overachieving right now, or does it feel like the opposite way? He's just sort of found who he is. And don't worry, I know it's a City channel, but you can be totally honest. We're not going to be offended either way.
No, I'll tell you the honest truth. I mean, I have spent much of the season waiting for him to kind of dip, to be perfectly honest with you, because the way he started the season felt like this really impressive rich
Yeah,
vein of
electric.
form. Yeah, everything was working for him. Even like I said, I mean, I'm sure Man City fans have seen the highlights reels and the free kicks he's been scoring for Frankfurt. I mean, they are truly remarkable. So that does kind of give the suggestion that everything's just kind of working for him. Luck's on his side, and it's bound to kind of come. He's bound to come back down to earth at some point. But as I mentioned earlier, he did begin to look really tired towards the end of 2024. He wasn't scoring the goals he was getting. He wasn't getting into the chances. He was into the spaces and creating the chances he was before. And the goals did kind of dry up a little bit, aside from the odd penalty. But like I said, he had that winter break, which they have in Germany. Wasn't as long as it usually is, but he still had a couple of weeks off, and then he came back at the start of 2025, and he looked like his old self. So that would suggest to me, rather than him dropping out of that rich vein of form and returning to the player he was, it was just a case he was looking quite jaded. And once he kind of got his form back, once he got his fitness back, he looked back to that previous kind of superstar.
Yeah.
So that's probably been the most crucial kind of moment of the season for me, that would suggest that no, this is the real deal. This guy is the real deal. Whether he'll continue to score goals and assists at the same rate in the Premier League is hard to say, because obviously the Premier League is a
Yeah.
different league to the Bundesliga. I mean, I love German football, but a lot of the clubs just don't have much interest in defending. They play a lot of clubs still love playing that gegenpressing kind of, heavy metal football. So they kind of throw caution to the wind defensively. And he has taken advantage of that a lot. He takes advantage of a lot of high lines.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
likes he loves to harass defenders that try and pass the ball out from the back. I know a lot of Premier League clubs at the bottom of the table now do that these days to their
Hmm.
own misery. So, he's the kind of guy who'd love to harass clubs like that, or teams like that. So I think there's a lot that there's so much he can transfer to the Premier League. I think he will be a great player for them. I guess it just comes down to where Pep Guardiola wants to play him and how much use he'll get out of him as a player.
We'll get onto that in a little bit of time. The one thing personally I sort of liked is that you'd think it'd be very easy for your form to dip when the links stop. The fact that he's had two brilliant games while, the transfer to City was obviously being negotiated, that to me is a really nice sign, because I think I really believe the mental part of football is the most important by a long stretch. If you can perform when the world's looking at you, and the world was, during that, then it says an awful lot about a player. It sounds silly, but he sort of just looks like a superstar as well. Some people just look like a superstar, and Marmoush is very comfortable, in that aspect. He just handsome fella, looks really cool, plays in a great position. I think sometimes when your confidence there, when you feel like you're the guy, you are. And I think that's where Marmoush is right now. But let's sort of dig down a little bit deeper into his actual strengths then. So what makes Marmoush the player that he is currently? If you were to sort of summarise a few of his strengths, what would they be?
Well, he definitely has pace. He definitely has acceleration. I think his real strengths probably lie in his kind of close control. and his ability to kind of turn in tight spaces. So again, the comparisons to Mo Salah are there. I mean, I wouldn't really say he's. I mean, I think I know it's a Man City podcast. So I don't want our show, so I don't want to go too much about Liverpool. But I'd say, I think Salah at his best almost reminds a bit of Messi in the way that he can kind of dribble through defenders. I wouldn't say Marmoush is like that. He's definitely more of a touch and go player. But his technique in terms of striking the ball, his passing is exquisite. As you mentioned in the stats, yeah, first and foremost, he's a goal scorer, but he does rack up a lot of assists, and that's because he just loves playing off other players. He loves playing off other forwards in the box. And I think if I had to kind of describe him, I'd probably say the closest thing I would say is more like a second striker or a number 10, to be honest with you. Number 10, maybe not so much because that suggests he's more of a midfielder. He definitely is a forward. He definitely plays in the final third. But I mean, to be honest, I have obviously been thinking about this over the course of last week because when he was first linked to Manchester City, I thought, oh, they're going to sign him. They're going to play him on the left wing, and it's just not. He's not the Jack Grealish replacement. He's not the guy to fill in for 𝙐𝙬𝙐𝙬𝙧. What I think he is he's the replacement to Julian Alvarez.
Yeah.
The way that Alvarez played between the lines, the way that
season
he
was sort of slightly further ahead of the 10. He was meant to be a 10, but he wasn't. He was playing so close. And De Bruyne does it now as well, doesn't he? De Bruyne is so close to Haaland.
Exactly, yeah. He's that player who can play off Haaland. If Haaland is injured, he can step in and play as the number 9 if necessary. But that's where I would say his best strengths lie, in that pocket behind the striker. He's the guy who can hit a shot from the edge of the box. He can take free kicks. He can set Haaland up or play 1-2s on the edge of the box. I think that's probably where he would thrive for Manchester City, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, the thing I'm sort of encouraged by is his touch, his technical ability. He's nimble, isn't he? I might be wrong with this, but you watched a lot more of him. But I'm getting slight Alexis Sanchez vibes. Is that a fair comparison? That sort of stocky, maybe not quite as explosive in terms of the dribbling Sanchez, but that guy you just love. He just reminds me a bit of Sanchez. And I might be. You see a little bit of Sanchez, obviously a little bit of Salah. He feels lazy, but. Yeah, he's finishing as well. He can hit a ball, can't he? He really can. I love a player who can put the laces through it, because obviously we've had some players who can do that at City. Aguero was just a rasp of a shot at the near post. But yeah, is there anything in that comparison, or am I getting ahead of myself?
No, I think there definitely is. I mean, the one that popped into my head just when we started recording there was actually Mahrez. As the one that kind of stood out to me. I guess Mahrez is maybe more of a wide player perhaps.
Yeah.
And quite enjoyed taking his defender on a bit more. But that kind of player. Like I said, could play in the pocket and play off players, as you said. Alexis Sanchez was great at that. He can play off players, but equally he can hit a long shot. He can score from just about any angle. And I'm hoping that's what Pep Guardiola sees in him, rather than I need someone to play out wide because. Sorry, you go.
No, I was going to say, so I mean, you're sort of hinting at what I was about to talk about, and then if there was going to be weaknesses to his game, is it that you can't just put him out wide? Would that be a fair conclusion? He would struggle a little bit.
I'm not sure if he'd struggle, but I think he would maybe he would lack the discipline to stay out wide. I know Pep Guardiola has a certain style. He wants those wide guys out wide. He wants them beating their fullbacks. He wants them doing those cutbacks and things like that, like 𝙐𝙬𝙐𝙧 has done and Savinho and things like that. I just think Marmoush should be better suited in the middle. I mean, obviously Pep Guardiola is an outstanding head coach, but I have seen him sign a lot of players from the Bundesliga and then almost kind of repurpose them. Like Guardiola's a good example of that. Like he was, in my opinion, just the perfect central defender, and he's obviously reworked him as a left back, and that's obviously worked perfectly well for Guardiola, and he does what Man City need him to do. But I would say Marmoush is certainly better suited as a second striker. If he has been signed as a left winger, I probably would have some reservations because I just think his time at Wolfsburg, at Stuttgart, at St. Pauli showed that he's just not nearly as effective when he's that far out. I'm trying to think of another player. In fact, another one. I don't know why I keep thinking of players at rival clubs, but Jadon Sancho is perhaps a good example here, where he at Dortmund was an inside forward. At times, he more or less played off the striker.
Yeah.
Man United sign him and think, great, this guy's a winger. They stick him out in the wing, and he's pretty useless when you put him out in the byline. Jadon Sancho, he's much better when he's more central. Yeah, he needs those players to play off. He has to have that 1-2. He has to have that touch inside the box to create his chances. And he's just not much used to when he's 30 yards out in the wing and he's on his own and he's isolated. He's maybe got two guys doubling up on him. that's when he becomes to really struggle. And I think Marmoush is probably similar to that. I don't want to draw too many comparisons to Jadon Sancho because I know he obviously just hasn't really worked
No,
out. But I mean, he's doing all right at Chelsea, I suppose. But
I
yeah,
was watching Sancho when he was 15, let's say, for City's academy sides, and Sancho's
of
best
course, yeah.
form for the academy sides was when he was linking up with Phil Foden and Brahim Diaz, and those three together, they were a cheat code. They were so special at
Yeah.
that age, but it wasn't like he was just dribbling past five, six players. I mean, he was, but
Mm,
he's the most joy he had at the time at that age was when he was playing these little 1-2s and little triangles with those
exactly.
two, and
Yeah.
he had such fun, and you could tell he just loved the link up and the little basically the football you'd play in a cage, a little five,
Yes.
those little kind of like street football cages where you're doing little touches past people, and that to me, I always felt, yeah, Sancho was just never just a left winger. Put him close to the
Yeah.
players, little 1-2s, pockets of space, as little passes. But yeah, I mean, Marmoush, I can definitely see those things. Do you think there's any potential weaknesses, in his game overall, not positional, but think he needs to work on? What's his work rate like
Uh,
as well? Actually, is a good question I forgot to ask.
Oh, his work rate is outstanding. That's the
Okay.
thing that really works really well for him at Frankfurt, and Hugo Ekitike is much the same. These guys run up and down the pitch constantly,
Man.
and I mean that's definitely something that's maybe worth bearing in mind. And I know Frankfurt do have this kind of growing reputation in Germany that they kind of develop these young strikers into players, and they kind of curse them when they move on because they've got a long list of strikers who haven't worked out when they've moved on. And Kolo Muani at PSG is a perfect example of that. But
Mhm.
what I would say there is that the problem is that a lot of these guys come through Frankfurt where they're playing in a counter-attacking team. It's a mid-table club for the most part. I know they have aspirations of being a top four side, but they're a mid-table club who more or less play defensive counter-attacking football. And they sign these players because they can run into space, they can run over the top, and they can counter-attack with speeds. And then they move to a club like PSG or Real Madrid where the team, their new team, are camped on the 20-yard line,
Yeah.
and they've got to find the deep. They've got to completely
Find
redevelop
space when it's not there.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, I'd say Kolo is the opposite of Marmoush in the sense that he was actually more of a left winger who PSG signed as a striker, where Marmoush is more of a kind of striker who was initially a left winger. But what I would say is I think Marmoush is different in that regard because yes, he is a counter-attacking player, but he has the technique and the skill to find that space in the box. That I've seen my only really concern about him is if he gets played too far out wide. Another thing as well, just the mentality of it all. Like he's only really had 1.5 good seasons in his career so far. He's only been the main man for a big club. I mean, Frankfurt aren't big in terms of European football, but they're probably one of the biggest sporting clubs in Germany. A huge
Yeah, no,
stadium and things
they're
like
an
that. So
institution, absolutely. Everyone
yeah,
knows Frankfurt, and the fan base is,
um,
huge. And but anyone who plays in the Bundesliga, a decent club, it's a high level. Like it's
yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
high level.
yeah. So I mean, yeah, it is a high level, but he's only had about a season and a half of that, and I would really temper expectations. Think people might think, okay, he's 25, 26, he must be a seasoned pro, he must know what he's doing. I wouldn't be surprised if he came to Man City and like the mentality side of things. Maybe Pep does have to work in that. Maybe he has to be careful with him. He doesn't play him week in, week out. If he has a bad run of form, he takes about the team. And I think Pep has been quite good with this. Obviously, you guys will know this with Foden. He has been quite well. At
Hmm.
least a few years ago, he kind of limited his game time to make sure he was ready to be that star player. Maybe Marmoush is a little further along than that, but I would also say just he hasn't been the main man for a title winning team. I know he's not going to be the main man for Manchester City, obviously, but it will be a new environment for him. It will be new demands. It'll be
Yeah.
new expectations for him. So that's the only thing that I would bear in mind. I think physically and in terms of attributes, he's perfect Man City, but mentality wise, I think it'll take a wee bit of adjusting for him.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And the only sort of concern for me is more or less just where he gets on the pitch right now. I mean, it might be that it takes a little bit of time, but De Bruyne, it looks like he's found a bit of fitness, and he's 100% the go-to in that number 10 role because he's might even be
Mm-hmm.
arguably the greatest ever do it in the league. So it's one of those things
Yeah.
where right now you've got De Bruyne going up. He's got that role locked down. Haaland's got
Yep.
that role locked down. Then he's talking about the wide slots basically, and I just don't. Once again, we don't know if he's going to be successful there unless he's allowed to drift inside. We've seen it for what it's worth for Foden. When Foden plays on the right,
Mm-hmm.
he's allowed to go central. Because they
Yeah.
understand. They understand that's where he's at his very best. But we'll have to see.
Well,
I guess. Go on.
yeah, well, all I was going to say was like, as you'll know, like Alvarez obviously left because he, I guess, wanted more of a regular start for a club, but he still picked up a lot of game time for Manchester City last season,
Yeah.
playing as a 10 or inside forward or whatever. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that's basically the role that Marmoush takes on. I guess maybe Foden has emerged as a number 10, so maybe that's a bit different now. But I'm assuming De Bruyne obviously won't play much football next season, even if he's still at the club. I suppose he
Yeah.
might even leave in the summer. So I think I think Marmoush would probably settle into that Alvarez role where
I
he's
agree.
not starting every week, but he can play as number 10, inside strike, inside forward, second striker sort of role. He can play across the front three quite comfortably, I suppose. But like Alvarez, you wouldn't stick him out left. You wouldn't play him as a left winger and expect him to play as a winger. But for the odd game or two, I think he can do that quite well.
So, final question: how far do you think he can go? Like, is this the tip of the iceberg for him, or like, is that the right analogy? I think it is. Yeah. Is this like, is he got a lot more to develop? Do you think do you think City have signed a potential superstar here, or would you advise caution?
I'm not sure I'd call him a superstar. I would just say I think he's going to be a really good first team player for Man City.
Yeah,
I mean, look, I think the lack of football he's played so far can actually be seen as a negative, but it can also be seen as a positive. You do
yeah.
see this a lot with players who have
Hungry and not too
very
tired.
quiet. Exactly. Yeah, he doesn't. I mean, we could all think of players who started their careers so very well, and then by the time they get to 27, 28, they look exhausted. Guys like Marmoush could probably play well into the 30s, much like Salah is now, I suppose, because he just wasn't a superstar when he was 25 or 26. So I could certainly see Marmoush going from strength to strength for Man City if Pep plays him in the right position, if he gets game time, if he can kind of find those link up plays with Haaland and Foden and Doku, etc. So there are a lot of ifs in there, but I guess for the price that Man City are paying for him, it's not going to break the bank. It's not the end of the world. I just wouldn't. I would temper expectations. Say I don't think he's going to be a starter. I guess when Man City's squad's fully fit, I think he's probably still on the bench, to be honest with you, because he's not knocking Foden out of that team. He's obviously not knocking Haaland out of that team. And like I said, I wouldn't really say he's a winger, but he's a great player to bring off the bench. He's a great player to play, 30, 40 games a season, much like Julian Alvarez was. And, maybe that's the difference between Man City this season and Man City from a couple of years ago.
Can he actually play as a proper just striker on his own, by the way? Because I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. We haven't got a backup striker. I mean, Alvarez obviously played when Haaland wasn't there. We've got a young
Mm.
lad there, but can he play that role if Haaland's not available?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. He can play as a
Yeah,
centre forward if called upon. I mean, at Frankfurt, it was a wee bit, like I said, they play more kind of counter-attacking football, so he's certainly played more time outside the box. And I wouldn't say he's the kind of guy who's just going to sit on the penalty spot and wait
yeah,
for
of course.
crosses to come in all day long, much like Haaland kind of has to become, I suppose. But no, he absolutely can play as a centre forward. So I think I think that's why Man City have signed him, to be honest with you. I think he can
Yeah.
play two or three positions really, really well. And as a result, I think he probably will play a lot of game time, even if he isn't maybe a starter in your strongest 11.
Yeah, I'm really excited for him. I don't know. I feel like sometimes you catch people when they're on the way up, and I feel like we might have got someone who just has a lot of belief right now and a lot of ability. And yeah, I don't know. I can't wait to see him in a City shirt. I think he's going to be a really fun signing. But I do think you're right. I think City fans probably have to be a little bit cautious because even when we signed Riyad Mahrez, who was a superstar already, he'd already won PFA Player of the Year at that point. He'd already won the league with Leicester. He sat on the bench a little bit. He had to stick a bit of
Yeah,
time because we had Bernardo and we had Sterling and Sane and everyone else. And that's just sort of the reality of playing for Guardiola and Manchester City, I guess. But I think that's fine. I think that's one thing actually City have lacked as the squad's got smaller over the past couple
yeah.
of years. We've been bringing on kids, younger players who may be a little bit rawer. So I think this is a really exciting signing. Stefan, thank you so much for your time, mate. I've really enjoyed it. Where can we find you again? Sorry, what's your YouTube channel about as well?
It's just my name, Stefan Minkowski. It's just where I do an analysis of the Premier League. I recently did a piece on David Moyes at Everton. I've done pieces on Manchester City as well in the past as well. How Guardiola became, that left back for Pep Guardiola. So, if fan of the
Brilliant.
Premier League, fan of Manchester City, yeah, take a look and see what you think.
There'll be a link on screen right now. It'll be floating on the whole card thing. Stefan, thank you so much, mate. All the links will be in the description as well. I've really enjoyed that. Guys, do let me know what you make of Omar Marmoush. Where's he going to play? How's he going to do this season? And where do you see him in the future for Manchester City? For now, though, don't forget to give the video a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, check out the other videos, check out Stefan's channel, and I'll catch you very, very soon.